Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. So here we have a new item that I've been hoping would be released for a number of years now, and I'm very pleased to see that it has actually come out. This is of course the new set of portal axles for the Element Enduro RC crawlers. In case you didn't know, portal axles offset the axle to increase ground clearance and also to give more clearance over the ground for the differential pumpkins. They're a common upgrade on some trucks, and they're also available on trucks such as the Traxxas TRX4. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to unbox this set of axles, take a look at what's in there, then go through the build, then do some comparisons with the standard straight axles that we've had on Elements up to now, and finally take them out for a little run and see what difference they make. Okay, let's start off by getting these things opened up. As you can see, this is brand new in the package, complete with the seals. I do not know what I will find inside. I'll say first of all, I'm really pleased with the quality of packaging that Associated and Element RC have done for this set. It looks really good in its dedicated printed box here, which has got nice bits of information all round showing the details of the portal on the side here. Also on the back a few more details talking about an upgraded bearing, the clearance that I mentioned because the diff pumpkin is higher off of the ground, some optional gears for more extreme underdrive, they describe it as, what we might normally call overdrive, on one set of portals. These are, I do not believe, included. They are an option, and this option part has not yet been released. Some other details then about the axles, and a little detail there about the way that the rear axle is held together, and I'll cover that in more detail as we go through the video. That's nice to see as well. Once again, the Enduro team putting together looks like a mini video game, old school 1980s video game cabinet that you can add. If you've got one of the other Element RC trucks, you'll probably remember that they like to put like garages, dioramas in the box and stuff like that. A nice bit of fun for those of us enjoy the hobby. Okay, so pull these bags out, see if I can get them out in numbered order. Start off with bag one. This is the new shorter axle housings. As mentioned, they're the same axle front and rear. So there is steering assemblies on both the front and rear axles. This bag also includes the ring gears and the pinion gears, it seems. These are the same as we've already had on the Element axles, plus a set of bearings, plus some hardware. Okay, so we can get bag two out. Bag two, a set of the polymer suspension balls there that go into the links. So obviously the links for the rear axle are included. Also got various bits here. These are the metal plates for the steering assembly on the Enduro. Also a number of gears here, 1, 2, 3, 4. So yeah, just the same gear it looks like for all of the axles. More bearings, and these are the bits for the portal knuckles. You can tell there that there's two holes in there, one for the standard height of the axle and then the drop down for the portal, which gives you the extra clearance. That seems to be everything really in that bag. And here we have bag three, which is a bit of the shock fluid. So perhaps it suggests you might want to refill your shocks, and some grease there. I'll probably be using my own greases and oils. And at the bottom here, last bag, bag four, small sticker sheet, some new stickers there so that you can tell everyone else on the trail that you're running the high clearance portal axles. A little bit of iconography there as well. This is the manual, or at least a sheet for instructions on how to build the portals. And that is the lot in this little kit. So next job is to get the tools out and start building them up. Okay, so we've got the instruction sheet ready. Let's make a start on the build. So I'm going to give the gears a generous coating of this blue marine lithium grease, which is a bit more waterproof and substantial than the standard black grease. Now I like to use the electric screwdriver on these longer screws to make it quicker, but on the first build, never take them fully tight with the electric screwdriver, always finish off by hand. So with the center of the axles built, it's time to move on to the portals. And now that we have all of the portals completed, we can start attaching them to the axles. Okay, at this point we flip the instruction sheet over and the two axles start to get built differently. This is where we're going to add the steering plates to the front portal. And for the rear axle, we're going to have to build ourselves some short links that go from here to the steering position to hold them straight. So there we have it. After a couple of hours effort, we have two completed portal axles, one for the front and one for the rear. So to try the new portal axles out, we're going to fit them to this trusty old Toyota Hilux, which has got an Enduro Builder's Kit 2 underneath it. And of course, the Builder's Kit 2 has the standard straight, fully plastic axles on it. So perfect for comparison with the new portals. Okay, so let's start off with a comparison of the rear axles. This is the new portal axle. This one here is the original Enduro straight axle. Pretty obviously, this is somewhat more complicated. Element chose to duplicate the front axle with all the steering components onto the rear and hold it in place with just these links. A solution that I kind of a little disappointed with personally. I'd have rather have seen them make the effort to do a dedicated rear axle without all these extra components. One thing that does mean is that this rear axle is quite heavy compared to the original. I'll put them in the scales in a moment. But before I do that, we'll just talk about the dimensions. Good news is that, as you would expect, all of the essential dimensions around the mounting points are exactly the same. So the distance between the link and shock mounting positions is exactly the same on both axles. The design that Element have around the top of the axle here is the same on both. So that means that if you are someone that's running one of the optional servo on axle mounts, it should still fit on the new style of axle. I mentioned that because perhaps there's some of you out there that would think about using this kind of axle to run a four-wheel steering setup on your truck. It's not something that Element support themselves, but I'm sure that if you're a builder and imaginative, you could get something to work with a four-wheel steering rig using this axle. The key thing, obviously, with a portal axle is how much more clearance do you have here? How much more clearance does the diff pumpkin have? And during the build, I took the measurements of the distance between the upper and lower axle in the portal, and that distance is 14 millimeters. So that means that this pumpkin here is approximately 14 millimeters further up above the ground than it is on this axle, which may not sound much, but you'd be surprised how low one of these is to the ground, especially when you're running a class 1 tire or a small tire. That extra 14 millimeters may well be at least 50% increase in clearance over the obstacles as you're driving around, thanks to the portal axle. The other key measurement, which is always interesting to take, is the overall width of the axle. And in common with most portal axles, this does have more width from hex to hex, which is a welcome increase in width, I would say, because the Element is perhaps on the narrow side compared to most other trucks. So I'll just get my tape measure out here and do a rough measurement. That's 208 millimeters from the face of the hex to the face of the hex. And if we compare it to the original Element axle, I'd put that at 190 millimeters. So you're almost a whole 2 centimeters wider by running the portal axle as well, which has benefits in terms of stability when you're going over obstacles, and especially if you're going side hilling over obstacles as well. And just to demonstrate the big difference in weight between the two axles, here's the original Element rear axle at just 115 grams all in, and the new portal axle with all those extra components comes in at 224 grams, nearly twice the weight of the original straight axle. Now a comparison between the new Portal front axle and the original Element Enduro front axle. Same with the rear axle, the essential mounting points are all in the same place. Particular attention on the front, obviously, to the panhard rod mounting, which is in both axles. It is in an ever so slightly different position. I don't think that's going to make much difference in practice. Same with the steering plates. They are ever so slightly different in geometry, but I don't think that's going to make a difference either. One thing to be aware of is that the position, the angle of the portals on the front can, as far as I can tell, only be set to 0 degrees of caster, so vertically up, in order for the standard steering link to not catch on the axle here. Just for reference, there are a couple of small marks on the back of the axle, and this lower one here is the 0 caster setting. That's the one you're going to need to build it to at first. The manual doesn't actually make that clear, but that is the one that you're going to need to use if you want to keep using the standard steering link. Okay, so stop press. I've worked out how to get the front axle to work with the added caster on the portals. The key is to change the way that the steering link is set up. The standard, you'd use the straight ends and you'd set the steering link up so it was flat. What you can do is if you change the ends to the angled ends, you can set the steering link up so actually it's arching over the central drive shaft, and that will give you the clearance you need, and that means that you can then rotate the portals one step and you are then in the alternative position with the markings on the hub, which gives you that extra caster, just like the original straight axle truck has. And basically I can tell by the way that the steering link and the panhard link line up as well. This is the way that Element intends you to do it anyway. It's a shame that the instructions are not very clear about it. Otherwise, that's all that needs to be said about the front axle in comparison to the original one. 14 millimeters extra clearance on the pumpkin as per the rear axle, 208 millimeters width hex face to hex face on this axle as well, again exactly the same as the rear. With the original straight axle, it's a slightly wider axle than the rear on the original, so it's 194 millimeters hex to hex on the original straight front axle. Again, still almost 15 millimeters difference in width on the new Portal axle, a handy increase. For the sake of completeness, we'll just pop the front axles on the scale as well. So this is the original straight axle from the Enduro. For the front end, that's 153 grams in total. And if we compare that to the new Portal axle for the front end, that comes in at 210 grams, which is slightly lighter than the rear because it doesn't have quite so many links and other hardware on it. Last thing to mention about these Portal axles, apart from the increase in clearance, is of course that within the portals themselves you have some additional gear reduction. So as standard it is a 15-tooth pinion here and a 20-tooth pinion here, so that's giving you an extra gear reduction of about 25% compared to a standard Element Enduro, and for that reason Element themselves actually call out in the instructions that you should use a 78-tooth spur gear in your truck rather than the standard one, which I believe is an 87-tooth. So that 78-tooth spur gear is going to get the gear ratios in a much better place for similar performance in terms of top speed, taking into account the additional reduction you're getting from within these portals. And after a little more work, here's that Toyota Hilux again, this time complete with Portal axles, front and rear. So here's my first impressions on the kit from Element to add Portal axles to your truck. In terms of the build experience, they went together fairly well. I've got a couple of small high points on one of the axles with the ring gear, which I think will probably wear in after the first run, but that'll need to be checked afterwards. Otherwise, it's a pretty well spec'd kit. I appreciate that they included things like wheel hexes and a lot of the hardware, so you didn't have to strip down your old axles as well. I must say that I was a little bit disappointed in a couple of things. The first thing that I was a little bit disappointed in is that they didn't include a dedicated solid rear axle, and instead it's a steering axle with some fixed links to hold it in position. From my perspective, fewer parts equals more reliability, and I'd have preferred to have seen that personally. But otherwise, if you're expecting to add extra ground clearance and a bit of extra width, these portal axles definitely do the job. Next up, a little footage of this truck out in the wild. As ever, I hope you found this video useful. If you've got any questions or comments, please do leave them below. If you're enjoying the content, I'd really appreciate a like or even a subscribe. Thank you very much for watching.